Wonderful, thank you. I'm really excited. I got my flights the other day, so we're all set to come. Welcome, and glad to be here. March has rolled around really quickly, it seems. And I thought before I go into any particular subject, I just start by throwing it open and seeing if anyone has anything that they'd like to discuss, or if they have any, if you have a question, feel free to just jump in. There's stuff I could talk about, but I thought I'd see if anyone has a question or is struggling with something right at this moment, or if something's coming up in your life that you'd like to ask about. So feel free, if there is something, just jump in, shout, and we'll go from there. If not, there's plenty of areas I could talk about, but or if there's something you want me to discuss, feel free to ask. Frank, yep.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I just want to say thank you so much. I've been doing the meditations in the morning and in the evenings, and I had stopped meditating years ago. I haven't done any meditation of any type for years, and this has given me a whole new way to look at meditation by just sticking with the questions and being with the questions and staying with the questions. It's just so, I don't know, I'm loving every minute of it.
Good.
Question I had for you is, like, lately, I'm dealing with my mom who has dementia, and that's been very painful for me. Even with non-duality and knowing that we're all one, and and that does help, but on the personal level, it's very painful. And anyway, so the question comes up sometimes. I'll be doing the meditation, and the question comes up: does my mom really have dementia? And so I just been sitting with that. I was wondering what you think about these kinds of questions when you're dealing with somebody else, and you're asking the universe, does my mom really have dementia? Do you think that's something that makes any sense at all to stick with as a question? Or
yeah, I mean, if I would tend to choose a question based on how it made me feel rather than whether it seemed to make sense, because you can tell, even if something is happening to someone else in your experience, what you're actually suffering with in that moment is your thoughts about what's happening. So you always are the best authority for yourself. So if you find a particular question helpful, then I would absolutely stick with it, because there's a kind of, we were just talking about this kind of guidance that comes inside that's stronger, gets stronger and stronger, that there's something, you can feel that there's something important about that. And you can feel that when you ask a question. Can you get a sense of it sometimes? There's some, it might not be a question that even makes sense to your mind, or that anyone else would say makes sense, but there's something you can feel, there's something important here. It's kind of questioning one of my beliefs about this situation, one of my sort of go-to ideas about this situation. So you can feel that, right? It's something important.
Yes.
Yeah,
it does. It feels really right when I do that.
Good.
I was going to ask you a follow-up question to this. Is I tend to, so in the morning I'll get up and I go right into questioning when I wake up in the morning. It's just like automatic thing just to go into questioning. I'll just question anything. Am I really feeling angry? What is it true that I need to feel anger? Is it true that I need to live with anger? Things. So whatever comes up is just turn into a question, and then my mind starts going to other questions, and then it becomes like a lot of questions. And so I wanted to ask you about that. What do you think? Should I just really stick to one thing, one question in the morning or whenever?
Does it bring you peace? Do you find your body relaxes when it goes off question after question? Or
yeah, if I let myself be okay with it, it's okay. But then I start, the doubting Thomas voice comes in and says, "Oh, this is, are you sure you're supposed to be doing this? Are you sure this is okay to do?" But if I let myself go with it, I think it's okay. It just, but the mind just goes from one question to another, and but I'm getting the gist of what you're saying here. Is that it's okay as long as it makes me feel good inside. If it's
Well,
if it feels
that's
right.
the whole point of any of this, isn't it? All of this non-duality is peace, isn't it? To find some way to kind of slow down inside, where we're not just being led around by our mind, and whichever way we find to kind of slide into a maybe even accidentally at first with a question, but then realizing this is a way that opens a door for me that just helps me slow down a little bit and have a little bit more contentment, which builds into peace. So that's more important than what we're asking even, or if it feels important to you, then I absolutely honor that, because the end of the day, all we really want is peace, isn't it?
Yeah.
And whichever way we find that in a consistent way, there's something there. There's a trail of breadcrumbs that we can follow eventually to. And if you let your mind go with these questions and you don't give it a destination, if you don't start thinking about a destination, you can relax more into this moment then where your mind is going, where the questions are going.
Yeah, because I do feel like I stay in that space of not knowing, and it's very peaceful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Space of not knowing. Yeah.
And that is the awakened state right there. I'm just watching these questions appear, and something's getting more and more excited by these questions, but I'm just watching that unfold. And if I don't try to control that or manipulate that, then there's something falling in love with just not having a destination, not needing to get anything out of the question even. And there's just a relaxing then, a slowing down in that.
Can I ask you a question? I'll follow up on this and then I'll be done. Yeah. So you talk a lot, you've heard you talk about shame and then fear. I have a lot of those two things, fear and shame, a lot. So I was thinking of trying to come up with a good question for shame. Like what is is it, I've been asking, like, is it true that I need to feel shame? Do you think that's, again, it's how I feel inside. That's really the question. The answer to my question, I'm just realizing, is how does it make me feel inside? And it does open it up. So like, so I think that's good. But what would you say about stuff like that when somebody feels shame or fear? What would you suggest to do about that?
Well, what worked for me was really looking at what the shame was about and questioning that. But again, any question that feels right to you is right for you right now. So for me, shame was about feeling that I just wasn't who I needed to be. I didn't quite measure up. So I could be sat here talking to you like now and just watching the words come out of my mouth, watching this conversation going on and feeling peaceful. Or I could be trying to get something out of this conversation, trying to make myself look better or make you like me, or 1,000 subtle things going on. And all from this idea that I need to improve upon myself. I'm not already adequate. That was the core of shame for me. And fear came along with that, because if I can't improve myself, I'm going to be in trouble. This kind of fear feeling and they spiral around. So for me, a question that cuts at the root of that, is there actually anything wrong with me? Or, and it seemed really even quite ludicrous to ask at first, because I was so sure there was something really wrong with me. But it seemed it had that trail that we were talking about, that those breadcrumbs, that importance to just go with that question. And There was no huge epiphany. There was just moment by moment, just a little bit more comfortable with myself, and my body relaxed more, and I just remembered to breathe more, and I could actually start to enjoy myself just little by little. Like just kind of, so whichever way you get to that.
Yeah, mine is about making mistakes. I have a lot of shame about making mistakes, and I'm working on that. So I think the idea of like, am I not good enough? Or is it true that I'm not good enough? That's a good question for me to always ask myself. So
yeah, and what's really wrong about making mistakes? Isn't that how we learn? You show me one successful person in the human kingdom that's got there without making any mistakes.
Yeah.
But for me, it was learning. It's not the mistake itself, it's what I do after that. Do I learn something from it, or do I beat myself up over it? And that really turned everything around. And looking at my life, and I'm sure everyone, yourself, could agree with this, every good thing that's ever happened to me pretty much came out of some kind of circumstance that seemed beyond my control. And all, I thought I'd made a mistake and gone this way, and I should have gone this way. And life was actually saying, no, this is the right way. But it felt the wrong thing initially. So whichever question hits at the heart of that, and even if you can't find the exact right one, if this one feels good, go with that, and it will evolve. As you've seen it, you'll find an even more relevant question. Your body's there to give you that kind of feedback. There's some sense of excitement or a sense of aliveness, presentness when I found a question that really was going to work for me, something really important.
Yes.
And you've already got that from what you're saying. You're able to listen to your body and go, this is the right one for right now. So I'm not worried at all.
Thank you, Helen. Appreciate it so much. Okay.
Thank you. Lynn?
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
So in your course, we were looking at lessons 3 and 4 and realizing who we really are. And today, I was reading a Facebook post that my husband had posted. It was a quote from Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he talked about the deep, all-embracing love that is our natural state. And then a man, a friend of my husband's on Facebook, commented, and this is what I'd like for you to talk about. He wrote, "A work in progress, my friend, not there yet, but one hopes and works." And I feel like that's probably a very common illusion that many have, and I would like for you to talk about, please.
Could you just read that again to me? Not there yet. Something like.
He wrote, talking about himself, he wrote, "A work in progress, my friend, not there yet, but one hopes and works."
So the hope in itself is not there yet. Well, not there yet, and the hope for the future is this kind of mechanism that we have to put something in the future ahead of some future moment where I'm going to be who I need to be or what I need to be. Or for me, this was the core of a lot of my own suffering, was this. Even when I encountered this kind of divine love, this kind of immensity of perfection, still immediately afterwards there was this division from it again, this separation from it, this movement to try to separate myself from it without realizing. So how do I have that all the time? How do I measure up to that? My usual sense of being someone doesn't quite measure up to what I just experienced. So what do I do to get this sense of someone to line up with this divine love? And if you compare those two, this one's always going to feel lacking, isn't this someone, this egoic sense of someone. So it sets out striving even harder then towards some future moment where it feels like it matches up. But that's the illusion right there, isn't it? The separation, that there's something that this imaginary someone can do to somehow get back to that experience.
Yeah, and when I read it, I felt like I wanted to cry. It's like such a hopeless, and I've been there. And sometimes, when I'm upset, I forget. But yet it's just, this illusion that we don't really understand who we really are. You explain it so beautifully. I just wanted to have you share it with everyone.
The strange thing is, though, I mean, and I don't know this person, but I'm just guessing that you're probably more upset than this person, because this person has hope that they're going to get somewhere. And paradoxically, it's only when that hope is dashed so many times that we will look for some way to accept we might actually be this already. Having come out of that illusion of trying to get somewhere and recognizing actually this is what I am, you can see the hopelessness of that mechanism, because it's always heading away from where it's trying to get to. There isn't really an away in the infinite, there's no direction away from it, but it can never just rest, it can never stop. So probably you find that you're more upset than that person is, because they'll read that post and say, well, yeah, I feel like I'm getting closer to that. And they might have some excitement or some hope, some sense that I can do something. It's quite bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah. Al and I were talking about the old saying, I am that I am. And he pointed out, it's really, I am that. I am that. Yeah.
In that, the duality of the seeking mechanism collapses. I think it was Meister Eckhart that wrote or said, I am what I wanted and I want what I am. And that hit me when I first heard it. And recently it keeps popping up in my experience again. I am what I wanted. So this thing I was moving towards, so desperately trying to get of realizing that that is already what I am. And now I find that I actually want what I am. I celebrate what I am, because there's this, instead of this rejection of what I am and moving to some imaginary place, I actually want what I am. And that, paradoxically, we only get to that point by rejecting what we are, what we think we are at least, over and over again, and trying to get somewhere until it fails epically, which it always does. Or it gives us momentary happiness rather than permanent joy. So in a strange way, it's kind of exciting when you see someone who's trying to get somewhere, and where they're finally trying to get to is the self, because that mechanism is going to fail them. And when that fails, there's going to be this opening into this piece, isn't there? Where I am what I wanted so badly. I already am it. There's a seeing of that. So it's perhaps the worst stage of all, to be really striving so hard and failing, and perhaps even more painful to watch somebody do that. Unless you see, if you can zoom out and say, okay, all of our striving failed, didn't it? I mean, did your striving get you anywhere? Did it get peace? Did it bring any of us peace? In fact, the striving mechanism itself is the disturbance in the end. We see that. So I end up right back where I started, but I want what I am, finally. And who knows, that person could be minutes away, seconds away, just don't know, from that mechanism collapsing. Thank you. Thank you. Val?
Hello.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask you something that I struggle with a lot. I was listening to a teacher recently talking about, someone was talking with them about, I had this disease, and they were saying also I was in this car accident where somebody crashed into me and I was hurt by it. And so the teacher was responding to that saying, well, we create everything. So, you created those things, and look at it in that way. And that always just grabs me wrong, because I just think there's so many causes and conditions, known and unknown, that can create a disease, that creates someone running into you, whatever. So I just want to get your thoughts on the struggle with that. And as I was listening to you talk about there's a question, bring you peace. If I come to this, if I put this into a question, is it true that I created this? Is everything, whatever it is? That question does not bring me peace.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's it took me a long time to really understand this myself, and it's not always easy to fully digest it. But what I found was certain thoughts that I was holding on to. So the idea that I'm a person, and I'm finite and limited. When I'm still believing that, there's certain experiences that can happen to me and to my body that can't really happen when I recognize what I fully am. So if I feel that I'm separate to everyone else and everything else, and perhaps most importantly, separate to the divine essence that we are, I'm going to mostly feel unsafe, because I'm going to be fearing an end to my existence. At some point, my existence is going to come to an end. If I'm a someone, if I am this body, when it's gone, I'm in trouble. I'm gone. So in my experience, then I found when I began to move away from this belief and began to see that my existence is not subject to an end, because I'm not actually just this body. I am so much more than that. My outer worldly experience began to change. So it wasn't that I was creating the car crash or the accident or whatever the physical circumstances were of my experience, but I was holding on to an energy field of vibration, fear, or we were just talking about shame, feeling like I wasn't good enough in myself. And those were putting me in a sort of vibrational range of experiences. So if I feel unsafe, then I'm going to draw to me, or I'm going to experience experiences that agree that I'm not safe. What that is for each of us is different. So it's not like I've created some experience in the way that perhaps our mind would think. But our experience out there with other people and other beings is those other people are also our own self. So it stands to reason that our experience has to change when we recognize all of this is me too. I'm going to begin to feel much safer. And this energy of safety, security is going to allow for a different experience. So things do change, but it's not that I'm creating this experience as a separate being, because that just can't be. And to try to answer your question about questions, for me, when something didn't sit right with me, it was always because, sometimes it's because I was resisting something I needed to see, but most times it was because there's something more that I could learn from it, and I hadn't fully understood it properly. So when I started to feel, I just don't, this just doesn't feel right, or it doesn't sit right, then I would just try to relax a little bit and play with the intention. Okay, am I understanding this properly? Have I got a deep enough understanding of what this person's saying? So some teacher, or I was reading a book and something didn't feel right, didn't resonate correctly. First thing I do is ask them, is this resistance to what's being said? Am I going into, and if it was, then just asking that question would tend to clear it away, and I'd feel better. But if not, then okay, maybe I haven't fully understood. Maybe I've read or listened or heard through some filters in my mind and not fully got 100% of what's said. And it became clearer to me that I've actually been doing that my whole life. I might have never really heard anything 100% with all this kind of, first with this filter, this idea that I am a separate someone. That's kind of filtering all of my experiences. So usually if there's something not really resonating with you or sitting right, it might just be that there's something else there that needs to be, or it needs to be heard again, or just softly, gently heard with an intention to see if there's more there to understand about it. Can you get a sense of what I mean?
So I've been a student of Buddhism and Thich Nhat Hanh for the last 20 years, and the teachings in that tradition talk a lot about causes and conditions as opposed to beliefs. So if someone who is considered an enlightened being, like Thich Nhat Hanh, gets a stroke, you know, is that something that was created in that way by him? Yeah, but I think I'm still struggling with that.
Yeah. So at some point, our body has to come to an end. Even the most, you know, even Christ, the Buddha, you know, any person at all, any human body has to come to an end. And that is inescapable. Whichever way that happens, happens even for an awakened being, of course, same as everyone else. And there's whatever mechanism that unfolds by is the same. It's the same outcome. Basically, the body comes to an end. Sometimes, though, with an awakened being, they would use that experience to learn something from it. So if we take the example of Ram Dass, he had, as you're probably aware, I don't know, quite a big change in his life. When this happened to him, he couldn't move around as much. He needed a lot more help. He struggled to articulate anything for a while, had to sort of relearn all of that. And afterwards, he said that it was perhaps one of the most, it was perhaps the only experience he could have had at that point to go deeper into his understanding of who he really is, what all this really is. It was a real sort of wiping the slate clean, having to start again. And in that, there was a deepening and a letting go even. And he even described it eventually as something beautiful. It didn't feel beautiful while it was happening, but what came out of it was beautiful. So we never really know in that way why something like that might happen to us. But there is always the capacity for some deepening to come out of that. And you could say maybe just the awakened being is automatically looking for that, whereas we perhaps before that we might go into resistance. Why has this happened to me? What have I done to deserve this? And then later we might say, well, actually some good stuff did come out of that. And then there's an acceptance and a deepening.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Did that get to the heart of your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you also.
Anyone else like to ask anything? Ruby?
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. The previous question kind of led up to was kind of like similar to my question. So my question was this. I had noticed about, I'm just going to say a time, maybe about, well, I quit working 3 years ago. So maybe about 4 years ago or around in that the message had changed. What I was thinking, the whole universe message had changed. And the message had changed from, you know, you got to do this, to you're already there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I never remembered that message for a long time. I said, this is new for me because I thought I was, you know, moving towards something. So the message changed several years ago. You're already there. You have everything you need inside of you. And the message was, you know, international. Everywhere I looked, the message, I said, well, everybody's getting this message. Yeah, right. So you know where I'm heading. So I'm just realizing I thought everybody had the shift, and then I had the shift. Who really had the shift? Who, you know, and you know what? You know, it's what? So if you can explain that to me, because you know, I just got this insight recently, and with you, it just came more clearer just seeing your face. And then I guess the gal before me, I remember you in Colorado. It was kind of like the same type of message, really. I mean, if you see the connection, or if you can articulate, because you're so clear. Thank you.
I'll give it a go. But you know, feel free to say if I'm not getting there. Feel free to jump in. For me, there's something happening on the planet right now that's gathering pace, isn't there? There's something exciting happening, and it's growing exponentially. So we're at the beginning of this massive global event, which is going to be extraordinarily hard to stop with the internet and air travel and the capacity to get on YouTube and find this truth. It's very different. It's never been easier or more available to access that message. You're already here. Mm-hmm. And to have the amount of repetition that we need for that to really land inside, because you can say it, you can hear it, you can even experience it. I'm here. There isn't anywhere for me to run to. And then 2 minutes later, we're running again, as we all do. And if we look at the things that have stopped this from happening in the past, this kind of global thing, whatever it is, awakening, it would be that we wouldn't be able to have that repetition. Life was harder, and we had to work harder. It was about survival of the physical body more than so now we find ourselves with these comforts where we can spend more free time, and we have ability to travel, and we have the internet, and you can get a book of a teacher that you love and get it sent to your house the next day without having to pack up your life and get on a boat and sail for 3 months and live the rest of this existence with that teacher as they were wherever they happen to be. So in that, there's a shift that's becoming more palpable in the human consciousness, that this is actually doable. This is actually it's not something far off that happens to some guy sitting on top of a mountain, although you can do that, of course, but it happens to ordinary everyday people. And we see more and more examples of that. And as we see more examples of that, of the internet and this belief in the human consciousness, the one being, that there's actually a shift from this is totally impossible to happen to me in this lifetime to it's just a matter of time, or just a matter of doing what these beings have done. And that there's a almost tangible shift in our, when I started seeking awakening, I was embarrassed to tell anyone because I thought it was ridiculous. It was impossible. And yet I couldn't stop seeking like all of us. Now it's almost fashionable in a way. There's some kind of, if you don't meditate now, you're the odd one out. You might just be meditating for stress relief or something. You might not be pursuing awakening. You might not even know what that is, but there's something shifted. And that message definitely changed. You can feel something in that. And to me, that's the core of the message of non-duality, is that you are already what you're trying to get to. And it's really just about exposing yourself to that enough times, isn't it? That you begin to slow down enough to actually get a glimpse of that. That begins to gather pace, and you'd have these moments, perhaps just nanosecond seeings. There's something about me that's already quite chilled out. Am I getting to where you were?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yay. You can feel it, right? People's attitudes are different, even in the seeking world. I can't remember anyone ever asking me, really, in the last couple of years, am I going to make it? It's more like, how do I get past this block to make sure it does happen? And the quality of the questions are coming. There are evidence of this shift. I get very excited about this. You can probably tell.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And you said something that I noticed, that is it seems though you're repeating it for me, so it seems as though this is the key for me. You said you just have to slow down enough.
Mm-hmm. For me, it was developing this willingness to, this forward-seeking motion that we were talking about with Lynn, I hope to get there one day. The only way to slow down that mechanism for me was failing. It didn't, failing over and over again to actually get there. But then simultaneously, this willingness to actually, I might be in a different place than I actually think. I might have actually got further in my awakening than my mind might always have a different opinion about. And if I'm going in this direction, I'm, by very definition, I'm not stopping to actually look where I already am. Like, could I be actually not suffering, or a lot more peaceful, a lot more forgiving of myself than I'm actually even realized? Could it have happened while I wasn't looking? And that was developing that willingness to see that, to even ask that question, was a pivotal turning point. Because otherwise you're just racing forward towards this imaginary future moment. And most people, I spend most of my time telling people that they're already way more awakened than they think they are, if they would just stop and look. Because we listen to our mind that's saying you're not there yet, and it will always say that. So this willingness to be wrong about this most important thing of all, that's what took the time for me. Once it came, it was life-changing.
You said the willingness to be
wrong, about where I think I am.
Right.
Because you could take any experience, any negative emotion that comes up, any thought pattern, and use it as evidence that you've got further to go, and totally ignore how you didn't push against those thoughts, or how you embrace that emotion more, or how you forgave yourself faster. The same thing happens, and you can take it two ways, can't you? let's say some strong emotion came up now as we were talking, some fear or some shame. Your mind will say, well, you shouldn't be feeling fear if you're awakened. And it will totally ignore the fact you might have really just let it happen, like really let the fear just happen. And which one of those you go with determines whether you're going to keep suffering in the next moment or recognize that's a very awakened way to deal with fear. Actually, could I be much deeper into this than I recognize? When I actually stopped to look, I was actually living how I was already living how I was trying to get to, and I hadn't noticed. And who knows how long that had been going on for. I'd actually forgotten how to suffer, and I hadn't noticed. I know that sounds really bizarre, but nonetheless, that was how it was. Kind of crazy now looking back, because you think you'll know when you're there. Apparently not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. That's very important. Al? Hi.
Hi. How are you, Helen? It's
Very
so
good.
good to see you.
So good to see you. Can't wait for hugs in the summer.
Oh, yes. If you were here now, you could have banana pudding. As my wife spoken about, I posted this passage from Nisargadatta, and it really struck me as it really resonated with me. And I won't read the whole passage, but there was one thing that he wrote here. He said, I used to sit for hours together with nothing but the I am in my mind, and soon peace and joy and a deep, all-embracing love became my normal state. And it just, that really struck me, and I was feeling it all up in my chest, and it moved up into my head, up in my forehead for a long, long time. And then after I went to bed, it just kept on and on all day yesterday, and then last night, as I was in the bed, it just struck me. Well, this is the one of the 14 portals that Helen was talking about. This is it. I had not, I'd maybe tried it just briefly, but I would always come back to my go-to, which is silence. Mm-hmm. But this one it really opened up for me. It was like, okay, well, there are doors and there are peepholes and there are large gates. And this one turned out to be a large gate that I had just overlooked. So I wanted to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And isn't that so beautiful? For me, silence and stillness and contextual field were my go-to ones. Silence was kind of the easiest one when I was really struggling. But then later, there was just this, oh my God, awareness. Awareness is completely silent. And the field is still, and the beingness is not moving at all. And there was this, what you've just described of, I would go back and read things that really confused me. 3 years trying to figure out what I am is. Like, stay in the I am. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? Really frustrated and disappointed and despairing, and finally found a way in through silence. And then I came back eventually to this I amness, and oh my God, that's so simple and obvious now, but it wasn't before. It was really seemed hidden. And there was this falling in love with all these different ways. Okay, can I call myself stillness and find that? Can I call it presence. What's it like as presence? How can I connect as presence? And you might find that it happens again and again through these other names, you know, that we, even the word self, capital S, it's your own self. It's just this right now, right here, immediate, isn't it? Very, and it's beautiful. It's like falling in love all over again.
Well, as I was talking to my wife about that phrase that's used in the Bible to describe God as I am that I am, and I always wondered about that. It just really didn't make any sense to me. And then it occurred to me that I am that I am, the same I am. I'm not a different I am your I am.
Yeah.
So,
you could replace that with the I am.
Yeah.
Or that, you know, whichever word. And then there's a recognition, I am is all there is, really. And suddenly suddenly everything helps to confirm what you've already experienced and seen, instead of being more confusing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you read all these other teachings and teachers and you go, you know these epiphanies, these light bulb moments. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Valerie?
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
So something that somebody said made me think of this question came to mind. It has to do with suffering. And so I've been experiencing lately some intense emotions coming up. Something triggers it, it comes up, and it's unworthiness, shame, fear, extreme sensations in the body, and doing my best to allow it to be and to be with it and not resist it. But yet, in a sense, it still seems like suffering. So is there a distinction between what suffering is and what experiencing that as the self is?
So the self would be, and it was very subtle, this, it took me a while to get it. So the self would be authentic to whatever's happening. So let's say some, like you mentioned, unworthiness, some strong unworthiness comes up, or shame, and the ego, the spiritual, the very evolved ego would say, I'm going to allow this. I'm going to do my best to embrace it, because I've heard that's what to do. And it's not incorrect, and it helps up to a certain point, but in the end, it's still separating yourself from it. There's a you and the unworthiness. So this ever finer, more subtle spiritual doer is trying to find something to do, or else it'll be out of a job. So it's about being the allower, being the embracer, being the one that's, and it's very subtle, isn't it? Very fine. And the self, to contrast, the self would, let's say unworthiness comes up and you really, really do not want it. So there's this massive unworthiness or fear or whatever it is, and then this real resistance to it. I don't want this. Like this real, we've all felt that, haven't we? I wish it would just go away. The self would just kind of welcome both of those. I'm having this experience and I really don't like it. I'm going to absolutely allow that. As the self, the awareness, the silence, the space of being is just, there's this body and there's this unworthiness and this real resistance going on. That's it. Nothing trying to change that experience at all. Whereas what the ego would do would probably say, well, I'm supposed to somehow get to a place where I can accept this or like this or something like that. And that's where the suffering comes from, right there, trying to change it. The unworthiness is there, and this resistance to it is there at the same time. And if you just let both of those be, the suffering stops immediately. So where is it written that we're supposed to be able to, acceptance does not mean liking something or even wanting it. It just means accepting this is what my body's feeling right now. You get a sense of it.
Mhm.
So we've had that experience accidentally where we've just been too tired to resist the resistance or something, or just, just in one of those. So we've accidentally slidden into peace, no suffering. And ego says, okay, that's the way then to get this next time. That's what I do. So off it goes again, around one more time. So if ever we're suffering, it's only because we're trying to change what is, because we think that awakening means, the self means not resisting something. But really, it's not resisting that resistance, which you can always do. I'm having this experience and I really don't like it. And I'm going to really not like it. I'm going to fully not like this. And you'll find peace as you do that. Can you feel something just stops trying to change anything in that moment then?
Yeah, I think that was different than what I was doing. I think maybe a week ago I was experiencing, it was more like what you were saying.
And it's only because our doer is mostly unemployed now. So it's looking for some part-time work, it's getting a little bored. And he gets really quite inventive at finding jobs around the house that need fixing up, So you just got to kind of watch for this. I'm feeling kind of terrible. I must be trying to do something with this experience somehow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now it just needs to come back so I can, before I forget. Oh Lord, yeah.
It's just, it gets ever simpler. Okay, am I trying to change this experience? If it's a positive experience and I'm feeling blissed out, of course we're not trying to change it. If it's unworthiness, of course we're trying to change it. And really that's the ego right there. I want to keep this one and push that one away. So it's just doing that in a very subtle way. So you just get more and more clear on it, and your body tells you, or you notice much quicker when your body's saying, hey, we're pushing against here or something.
Mm-hmm.
The clearer you are, the more stuff you work through, your body will tell you in 10 seconds instead of 10 hours. And you, well, what's going on here? I feel really tense and horrible, something like that.
So it kind of makes me curious then about, also I noticed that tears, like today I was having compassion on my ego, I guess, or seeing it as this little child, and tears came and I felt this love, but it only lasted for a little bit. And I thought something made me stop. It was like it just didn't flow. And I thought, I look forward to the day when these tears can just flow without something stopping it. Is that resistance as well? That's just like coming up and stopping the flow?
Could be. But even that isn't something going wrong. You can just love that. Okay, something still feels a little embarrassed about letting this pour out. Can I just embrace that and let that be too? Yeah. Anything that happens is an opportunity to be with what is.
Learning better and better how to embrace it, I guess.
Yeah, and can you celebrate that you let yourself feel it for even though something cut it off? that's a positive. Okay, actually, I was really being with it for some time, and that's something to celebrate rather than focusing on yes, but yeah, something cuts it off.
Yeah, right.
Because ego says yes, but, and the self says, yeah, you did it, you know, for that time. And ego goes, yes, but. So
Right.
it's always your choice, isn't it? Which one of those you go with. Today I was more authentic than I've ever been, and it felt good, and I'd like more of that. I'm just going to relax into that. I'm going to focus on the fact that I cut that off, but you know, something knee-jerk response happened. I just want to feel like that again. Just it was free and it was open, and I was being whatever I was being, and if something in that felt nice, felt good, felt real. And I'd just like to order more of that. Thank you very much. Yeah, something like that, right?
I need to do more ordering of that. Yeah.
And then relax and forget about it. You didn't make that happen today, these tears. It just came, didn't it? It wasn't some amazing spiritual feat of, you know, you were meditating for 20 hours and then finally, you know, but it just happened. Wonderful.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. You're right on track, you know.
I
know you don't believe me, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I'm going to believe.
Okay, good. Okay. We have to be really quick, Lofto, if you can. Do we have time? Sign-up, is that okay?
I'll be very quick.
Okay, cool.
So last Satsang, I asked you how to be the self, and you said look inside you and see if you find someone there. And I've been doing that.
Have you found one?
Last, no, not yet.
Good.
And I think this is what has been causing all the problems in my life until this point, is that there's something in me that just wants to seek. It's like a seeking entity, and I'm just going to call it the seeker because it's nice to externalize it somehow. And the seeker has been seeking himself somehow for many decades, and has never really found himself. And I think that's the root of the problem. But
can you see that seeker it's not a someone that much we discovered together? Can you see it's more of just an energy? It's more just a habit. It's not an actual thing. It's just an energy, a certain way of being, isn't it?
Yeah.
And can you just leave it be?
The seeker thinks that it is a someone, and then it's searching for itself, for himself. But the seeker cannot find himself.
No.
And that was the problem, but now it's the solution.
So you just watch something within me wants to race forwards. I can just let that have at it, and I can just sit here in my own being.
Yeah. And it's just it just feels nice not to find anything there.
Yeah. Because then you're not responsible for the success or failure of your awakening. Awakening is just happening then.
Yeah. And I guess I was always stuck in time. I always thought, and I'm gonna try to find myself, and at some point I'm gonna find that I'm not there. But it's not about that. It's about now. Right now I don't find anyone there, and also not now, and not now, and not now, and not now. And
Still
it's never been there.
Still not now.
No.
Still not
now. and somehow I'm getting used to this very slowly, but to not finding it. Of course, there's still something that really wants to find. And
that's okay. That seeking energy will turn towards this now, trying to find, and then it'll just expend itself at some point, and you'll be as you always have been,
But
as
it's
you are right now.
this is a very dangerous path, it seems, like, because it's all disappearing. And
Or you're just seeing how you've always been.
yes. Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Signer. I'll hand the mic back. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Wonderful.